Thank you. I'm just recording for Devon Live.
Oh, okay.
So are you handing out, I know that you're giving out leaflets to people about species that are now extinct.
It's about that and about the climate crisis as well as the extinction crisis.
Okay.
They're both critical now. Unless we do something right away, we've only got a few years left to turn things around.
Okay, thank you. How many people do you think have joined today?
Actually, what do you think? A few hundred?
A couple of hundred.
I've come from Ashburton. People have come from lots of different places. But
so it's not just Exeter?
No, I mean there's things happening every day now in different places. Very small scale. They're not all huge sort of things like in London, but they're springing up everywhere. So Operation Mushroom, they call it.
Operation Mushroom. Okay. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. So we've just been keeping a respectful silence because this is a funeral cortege by Extinction Rebellion Exeter. But as you've just heard, people are coming from all over Devon today. The march has started at Southern Hay and is now marching towards the High Street in silence with just a single lone drummer at the front leading. There are a couple of hundred people here who've come from all over Devon, all ages. And the message on the back here is "Extinction is forever." Leaflets are being handed out about species that have now become extinct. And the message is that we don't have much time. So the police are here making sure that the protest is peaceful, but it is a silent protest, and with a coffin at the front. So this is the back of the march now, and I'm going to go back up to the front where they are. If you joined us earlier, you will have seen they're carrying a coffin and they have a drummer, and people are dressed in old sort of Victorian style funeral wear. Lots of people with their faces painted white. Most people are wearing black. And they are in mourning. There's a lady here who's carrying the skull of an animal. Can I just ask you what you're carrying? I'm doing a Facebook Live for Devon Live. Of a car, a skeleton. Okay, thank you very much. So that lady has just said quietly, because they're keeping a sort of respectful silence, that she's carrying the skeleton of a calf found on Dartmoor. So as you can see, people of all ages, older people, people pushing push chairs. People feeling very passionate about what's happening to the planet and about climate change. This gentleman here is carrying a placard that says, "Will our children ever hear a cuckoo?" with a picture of a cuckoo on the top. So the procession is moving in slow motion, a sort of respectful pace, slowly marching towards the High Street here. I'd say there's probably 300 or 400 people actually altogether. Quite a lot of people have painted their faces with sort of skeleton white. People have gone to a lot of trouble wearing sort of fancy dress to mark the occasion. Lady's carrying a gravestone which says, "I told them I was ill." There's another lady in the middle who's carrying a dead funeral wreath of dead flowers. Somebody else has a poster that says, "The birds are singing it's the end of the world." Go back up towards the front now, where the coffin is being carried by the main funeral cortege. This poster says, "Business as usual equals death." Although the funeral party is in silence, there is actually a band playing nearby, so the music that you might hear isn't from this procession. The procession is in silence apart from the drum at the front. And here's the coffin. Coming back towards the front now. For those of you who may have just joined us, outside St. Stephen's Church. This is the Extinction Rebellion protest. I better make sure I don't get run over. Extinction Rebellion protest about the damage that climate change is doing, killing off many species of plants and insects, and about climate change in general. Exeter City Council this week has declared a climate emergency and has vowed to make changes. So slowly this is becoming more mainstream. Obviously the protest now is in the high street, so buses are starting to be held up behind it. It's going to proceed from here down South Street and then back via Cathedral Green back to Southern Hay, where the protest started at 12 noon today. Protesters have gone to a lot of trouble. They're wearing quite sort of ornate Victorian style mourning outfits, quite dramatically carrying a coffin which says nature and has a wreath of ivy and white paper flowers on top. Leaflets are being handed out to the public as the procession moves slowly down the high street. The leaflets say, "Zero carbon by 2050 is too late. We must all act now." That's the message today. I'm just going to go to the back now and see the traffic situation. All ages here, young and old, people carrying children, pushing prams. People carrying flowers. Thank you very much. Act now, extinction is forever, this lady's message is that she's carrying. Thank you. And what does the flower say?
Orange, upper wing, moth. Gone.
Oh, so everybody who is carrying
Flower marked with the species that has gone extinct.
So the species which is extinct, which you're carrying, is the orange upper wing moth, and those are now extinct in this country or internationally. Okay, thank you very much. I'll let you go on. Thank you. So, yeah, thank you. So lots of people are carrying flowers, a white paper flower marked with a species which is now extinct. So this is the back of the protest. So there are, so far, 2 buses held up, I think. Just going to go and have a look. Bus driver sitting patiently. Oh no, there's a queue. There's more buses at the other end of the high street. So luckily at this time of the day the buses aren't too busy, but this might build up as the procession moves very slowly down South Street before turning back towards Cathedral Green. So there could be, I would say, probably up to a half an hour waiting time now. But it's taken 25 minutes for the procession to get from Southern Hay to outside House of Fraser. So it could be another 25 minutes before it turns back from High Street and South Street.
There was a lady on Channel 4 the other night, you know.
So the protest of, I'd say, maybe 300 to 400 people has now come to a bit of a standstill outside House of Fraser. The message that they're trying to bring home with this dramatic procession carrying a coffin down the high street is that there are species which are now already extinct, and they fear that this is going to get worse if people don't act now to reverse global warming. Somebody's asking on here who's watching an authority. We do know that Exeter City Council earlier this week has declared a state of emergency and is taking steps to do everything it can. And I know that other councils around Devon are doing similar things. So I'm going back now. We're just passing Queen Street, so there are buses now also blocked. The protest has been joined from the other side. This is outside Marks and Spencer's. So there's another bus there which has been held up in Queen Street. Lots of people are filming from the side. It is quite an eerie feeling as we move down the high street in slow motion, with many people dressed as if for an old-fashioned Victorian funeral cortege. Quite a few of the protesters are in fancy dress to make more of an impact. This is the front of the procession now, which has reached Burger King. They have a drummer beating a slow beat, which they're all keeping time to. Everybody carrying a white flower, these paper flowers. Each flower marks a species of insect or flower that is now extinct. And that's the message that they want people to take away from today. At the same time, obviously, there are people who are upset about the effect it's having on city centre bus transport. Lots of people making the point that people must have come here either by public transport or by car. Go back to the front now. We're just reaching the Guildhall where the decision was made on Tuesday night to declare a state of emergency by the City Council. It's a silent protest. In fact, it's eerily silent, apart from this one drum. This is quite a dramatic protest, but then people believe that it's time for dramatic steps to be taken to get the message across about climate change. Just passing the Guildhall now. It is having an impact on people around. It's very, very quiet. The high street is busy. I mean, lots of people, but everybody's standing quietly and quite respectfully by. Obviously, it is having an impact on public transport. I'll walk now to the back and see how bad it's impacting the bus service through the high street. See what this poster says. Act now, save our ecosystems, and it's got a picture of a bumblebee.
Cars.
This poster says climate change equals death. This says we will all be dodos. Dodos, of course, are now an extinct species. This poster says respect your mother, meaning Mother Earth. This is, will our children ever hear a cuckoo? Cuckoos obviously famously can be heard on Dartmoor, but will they be in the future? Is the question that's being asked here. Carrying flowers and some people carrying wreaths. These are the flowers that are being given out with the names of extinct species on. Thank you. Does it have the name of a species on it?
These ones don't, unfortunately.
What's it made of? The spotted sulphur moth, which is now extinct.
Thanks to human intervention.
Thank you. So now we come to the back of the protest, and the buses. Bus driver just rolled his eyes at me and laughed. He's patiently waiting. The other buses seem to have held back and be queuing further up the high street. Oh, there's a fire engine here now. Hopefully there's not a fire emergency. Maybe it's just getting in place in case of emergency, because they wouldn't be able to get through. It's turning into Queen Street. Fire engine has just turned into Queen Street, and the other buses are being held up at the top end of the high street. They're not attempting to come through. Maybe they've been asked to stay at that end. I'll just go up and have a look. So we're here in Exeter city centre, where Extinction Rebellion protesters are today moving in a very slow funeral cortege that left Southern Hay at 12 noon today and is now moving down very slowly down towards South Street, holding up the buses there, but most of the buses are queued further up the high street. I've got a feeling they've been asked to stay back by the fire service, which wants the road kept empty rather than a queue of buses in case they need to get through. So I'm going to go back now down to the other end of the protest. So the protesters are moving in very slow, solemn pace, in the style of an old-fashioned Victorian funeral cortege, with people dressed appropriately in black mourning clothes, and a lot of people with their faces painted with white face paints to resemble skeletons. So quite an eerie atmosphere. It's busy again here now. People are talking normally, but as the funeral cortege passes, people are keeping a very quiet and respectful silence. So I think it is making people stop and think. And the protesters are handing out white paper flowers, each marked with the name of a species which has become extinct. And their fear they're trying to raise today is that if climate change isn't stopped and reversed soon, it's going to have a much worse impact on the planet. So these are the people who've been stuck in their buses now for about half an hour down the high street. So the protest is now turning off back towards, well, this section is now turning, these people are turning towards Cathedral Green. So just passing Jack Wills and going back towards Cathedral Green. But the road has still been blocked at the other end at the traffic lights. It looks like buses are going to be... So the buses are now being... I think they're going to let the buses through. I'll just go and check without getting run over. Yeah, they've just opened the road now. So the buses have now been let through. Normal service has been resumed on the high street. The protest is now going towards Cathedral Green. It's now sort of bustling and noisy again, whereas earlier it was very quiet as the funeral cortege passed a very slow and respectful silent march. So it's obviously busy here on Cathedral Green on a very, very hot sunny day. And some of these people must be very hot in their black, heavy funeral garb. There were quite a few police, community support and police officers on the green. But this is a very quiet, peaceful protest outside the cathedral. Protest is now heading back towards Southern Hay, where it started at 12 noon today. Most people have kept a very quiet, respectful silence as the protest marches very slowly past. But I have to say there is a crowd of people shouting from across a wall. There's a large crowd in fancy dress, wearing sombreros, all now leaping over the wall into Cathedral Green. About 20 young men dressed in sombreros and ponchos for some reason, who've been shouting at the protest. They look like they're on a stag do. But mostly, there's been a very quiet and respectful silence as the protest passes. This is Colleen Smith reporting for Devon Live. No, hang on a minute, sorry. Was about to end there, but the respectful silence has just been shattered by what looks like a stag party dressed in sombreros and ponchos running across the green. Somebody's just said they're sharing this in London, that Boris will listen. I wonder who they mean. Apart from the drunken stag party of young men in sombreros, there has been a very, very respectful silence. It does seem that this sombre and slightly eerie parade is having its effect. People are stopping. Most people seem to be appreciating the way that they're getting their message across here today. The coffin says nature, so they're carrying the body of nature in this march through Cathedral Green. Protest seems to have grown now. I'd say there's probably about 400 or 500 people in total, stretching right across the green.